It's hard to say, you know what, I may have been a jerk to this person. Those are really hard things to face, come face to face with yourself on and admit. They're thinking, okay, everybody else in my family is back as far as we can remember or I can see has processed grief this way and they've all been okay. How come I'm not? What am I missing? What am I doing? Did I not say that prayer right?
Welcome to the Citrine Path, a space for healing, transformation, and authentic connection. Join us as we explore spirituality, energy, personal growth, and the journeys that shape who we are. Light the path within and step into the conversation.
Okay, I would like to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Citrine Path. So I am Patsy with Violet Elements, and we have my beautiful co-host,
And I'm Amber with Citrine Enlightenment.
and we have another special guest with us. I know we kind of through the path we were discussing in a previous episode about you come in contact with people and people cross path that just seems to be a fit of what you're looking for at that time. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and share a little bit about her journey, and then we'll get started.
Okay, so my name is Sherri Beach, and I am currently putting together it is together, but embarking on a path for something that is very dear to my heart, which is grief. And so my platform is called Speak Grief. I'm 61, and life didn't work out the way that I had intended. So then, after a series of events, I needed to get myself together, and that's where all of this started.
So I just want to thank you so much for sharing because that's where a lot of the stuff that me and Amber have came across was it was something that we were doing for ourselves and then was sharing it with each other and then kind of sharing it with our friends and then it kind of bloomed to this into what we do with our clients now and kind of like our business. So feel free to share as much with your journey, but know that you do not have to tell us everything. Um,
Okay.
so do not share more than what you feel comfortable with. Okay.
Okay.
But can you give us a little bit more information on what Speak Grief is?
Absolutely. So, oftentimes when people are going through the grieving process, they think it's limited to one thing, which is usually death, and that they get a lot of input from other people about how it's supposed to look. Like, aren't you done grieving? It's been a year since that person's passed, or um, you really shouldn't be feeling this way. You know, move beyond that at a time, and you don't experience processing grief and it happens to you. You can help other people, like, oh, my friend, I'm helping her, supporting her because her husband just passed. But until you experience it yourself, you have no idea what that looks like for you. And through many different things that happened very short order in my life, I was hit with a huge amount of grief and had really nobody around me to talk to about it. So I had to figure it out a way out of it, or otherwise I was going to lose myself. So what I've decided to do is after coming through the other side of that and doing a tremendous amount of work in healing, I thought, not the only person that can feel this way. So I thought, why not put together some questions and some classes and courses that can help people navigate this for themselves without the influence of outside people so they can truly heal. And that's what it is.
I super love that you've taken something that hard you went through in life and turned it into something beautiful you can help other people with. Because I think the true innovation of pouring from your heart to help others is finding yourself in that moment and then being able to feel them on a heart to heart level. Does that make sense?
Totally. Totally. Oftentimes I think people feel very alone. Processing grief and going through everything that entails is a very individual and unique process. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to be able to share or have someone to touch base with. And oftentimes, when it's people that are close to you, um, always well-meaning. They think that they have the answer or the solution. And sometimes having emotional ties, family ties, generational ties can muddy those waters. And so it's really nice to have someone who is outside of the circle who can really provide a clear um, path, direction, or suggestions on some things that they might want to do. My goal is never to tell somebody what they need to do, but maybe provide some questions, some solutions, and some feedback that they can find the way themselves. Because there is no one way, there is no right way. It's an individual way.
So you mentioned that you reinvented your life. So what does this
Mhm.
reinvention mean to you?
Oh, I'm a lifelong loser. Number one, after 27 years of marriage, two kids, some really hard things that came up in my life. My daughter was a drug addict on the streets. I did not hear from her for months at a time. Lost my father, my mother, and my grandmother all in very short order. Um, After 27 years of marriage, was told that I don't really think I ever loved you. And I have lived for you, but I don't think I want to do this anymore. So my whole life basically fell apart. I had to move out of my home that I had built. Um, I had a good job, but I realized I had no identity. So reinvention was really coming into my own, finding out who my identity was, who I was as a person, what I believed, what I liked, what I, didn't like. I wasn't some wife, I wasn't someone's mother. I was just me. And I had no idea where to start. And it was a scary process, but it was really finding that sovereignty, that self, that joy, what was really empowering to me, what I liked, and feeling whole and healed.
And that's it's so funny. So I don't know if you've watched our new episodes so far, but it seems like this whole theme of this season is all about empowering yourself. It seems like every time we have a conversation, that's always where it leads back to. So I love that you saying that reinventing yourself, gave you back some power of knowing who you are, and I just super love that.
I mean, I think most moms come to a point where they kind of have the same thing happen. I'm down to one baby at home technically. And I never thought I would be mother of two, but it is different every time one person leaves, even just the household, like in a good situation, they've moved out, started their own family. So, so I know you talk about grief doesn't just mean death. So is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, um, could that be considered a stage of grief too, of just changes in the household like that?
Absolutely. I think grief encompasses way more than death. It is being an empty nester. You've been a mom, you've cared for this individual, and they go out into the world, and then, they're not out of your life, but they're out of your home. So your whole routine changed. So anytime anything like that is disrupted or changed, it can bring on those feelings of sadness, of depression, of what do I do next? And all of those tie back to grief. It can look like, a child moving out, losing a job, moving to a different state. Anything that causes change and causes those feelings of upheaval, change of, I'm going to have to change my identity. Who am I going to be in this new job? Who am I going to be in this, new town that I've moved to? I'm going to have to learn everything all over. All of that can contribute to anxiety, fear, depression, which, if not dealt with and you don't have that identity, can lead to grief. So, absolutely, I think it's definitely more than death.
So what would you say is probably the biggest form of grief or the biggest part of grief that people overlook?
Boy, that's a really good one. The biggest part of grief is that it's really an individual process, that you can definitely get suggestions from people. Um, but when people start saying, you should be over this by now. Or, you know, maybe it's time to do this thing. Um, you know, take those words and review them within yourself, but don't do anything that doesn't feel like really aligned with yourself. People are very well meaning. No one likes to see another person hurt or suffer, but it has to be individual. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people really overlook. And that there really is no time frame. For some people, they can get through it quickly. And sometimes even once you think you've gotten through it, you may be, and I've had this happen, driving on video takes me back to a place that I was with a person that I loved, and then having to realize that that person's not in my life anymore. So it's an ongoing thing. I don't think we ever completely get over it, but you can process most of it and know that there's going to be times that things are going to remind you of whatever it was, and that's okay. It's all okay.
So, what are forms of grief that people often overlook? You mentioned like a new job or losing a relationship, but are there any other ones?
Anytime you lose something that is important to you, it can be a pet, it can be having your ideals challenged. Like I identify in these beliefs. I identify in this structure. And life goes on. We get different information, different input, and that, you know, how you grow and change as a person, those things can often change. And it's not out of the realm to look back at that and mourn those things because there's always a limbo period, I guess is the way that I put it, from the person you've been to the person you're becoming. And that limbo period, that kind of in the middle, one foot on one side of the fence and one foot on the other, can be a really scary place because you're leaving what you've always known, but you don't know exactly who you're becoming look like. And that's something that I think is a huge component of grief. Give yourself some grace to process it. That's exactly what happened to me for 30 years. I went yesterday and back again, and I didn't process anything. And in a period of about 30 days, it all hit me at once. So give yourself some grace.
So I know, just from my experience within our family household and structure, we were all affected by the same thing, but like you're saying, everybody did do it individually. But what I found was it was super hard for us to talk about it with each other. So why do you think grief, so many people struggle to talk about it?
I think it's down to grief. There's the seven stages, right? You have denial, you have anger, you have bargaining, you have depression, you have acceptance, and you feel all of them. They're not always in order. There's no time frame. But I think what happens is that a lot of people, when they're dealing with something that is grief, it's very often that a person will feel like, if I would have said this thing, if I would have done this thing, if I would have changed my mind here. And we take a lot on that if we would have done. And I think when there's a lot of people that are feeling those things, they ought, you feel ashamed, like, wow, I had this argument with my friend and they ended up passing and we never reconciled. And if I would have just got on the phone and called that person, we could have patched things up and everything would have been okay, or we might have had some peace on it. So I think it comes from not having peace and maybe a sense of shame or wishing you would have done something different. People, it's really hard to talk about those things. And then when you have a group of people that are all feeling some sort of in a similar way, it's hard to bring that up. It's hard to say, you know what, I may have been a jerk to this person, or you know what, we didn't leave on the best of terms. Those are really hard things to face, come face to face with yourself on and admit.
So you mentioned that you come up with these questions to help people work through their grief. So I'm really interested to learn more about like how you help people work through this. What what does your practice entail?
I just got let go from my job. That's something that a lot of people are going through right now. I just got let go from a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. Um, you know, I've invested and I just don't know what I'm going to do. And everybody's telling me that, I should try something new, and everybody's telling, or other people are telling me, well, this person's hiring or this company's hiring, or have you thought about looking across the country? Just, whatever their input is. And so basically the first thing I ask is what do you want to do? And oftentimes people just want to have a person that is neutral that they can talk to. So if it's somebody who's like, well, maybe I want to try something new. So I might ask them, and it's just really, simple, just getting them to really reflect on what it is that they want and they like. So you've mentioned you want to try something new. What are the things that you are interested in, and what does that look like for you? you know. And once they come up with those things, then start looking at avenues that they can attain that. Do you think that's going to give you some relief? And then oftentimes they also have a hard time being able to answer the questions or respond to people who are bringing these things up. So it's really having them get clear within themselves, within their identity. Like, my mom keeps telling me that I need to go apply at this company, but I really don't want to do that. So, how do you and your mom communicate? How do you think she would, best receive that information, and some conversations that they might be able to have, or some starters that might be able to bridge that gap? So it really is about listening. It's really about finding out where they're at in the stage, how many different things impact them. Is it generational? Like, my family comes from this background, and this is how we process this. Or my relationship with this person was this way, and I don't feel like I can say how I feel about that person now that they're gone. So there's a lot of variables. So it's just really asking questions on getting clear on what they want, what they're after, and then providing them with questions. And oftentimes I will sit with it for a day or two and just kind of review some of the information that I have, and then try to get at some thought-provoking questions that they can answer on themselves, and then discuss it in more like I guess, like a counselor type fashion, but always providing them with options and then asking how that feels. Because really, at the end of the day, how everyone processes grief is different, and it needs to feel aligned within yourself. If you're having any kind of anxiety about it, or if it's not really comfortable for you, then either you've missed something or you're not voicing something. So you might need to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, so it seems like you take a like almost like a life coach stance on it. You're just there to give support and
Mhm.
guidance and, you know, give the hypothetical questions of, okay, if you want to choose road A or road B, what would make you happier, so on and so forth. So that's very interesting and very cool that, you aren't there to make the decisions for them, but sometimes you just need an outside person to say, hey, look, what about this option over here you haven't thought about? And I do that with my mom all the time. I'll call her and just say, hey, I need a guru moment, and tell her my life issue. And then she's able to say, okay, well, do you think you should handle it this way or should you handle it this way? And just having somebody to look from the outside in, I think is very beneficial in so many ways.
And the other thing I want to mention too is that, culturally, there are so many cultures that process grief in many different ways. And sometimes it's really easy for us to look at just how we do it, how our family does it or our generation does it. But like, with Native American Indians, they have, processes and it's very communal. Some families, it might be, we don't talk about this outside the family. So sometimes it's introducing something that is outside what they would normally do that really lets someone have an outlet to give voice to their grief, to find a way of being able to process it. Some people don't like to journal. Journaling is great. I call it speak grief because I think with voice and frequency and resonance, all of these things, when you get it out, if you need to scream, scream. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to sing, sing. It just allows it up and out of your body in a way that other things don't. So there's just finding also avenues that might not be what the person would even entertain, that might give them an outlet or a way to express this, and they might not even considered it or know about it. So it's really all encompassing in several different ways.
So I'm curious about this part. You mentioned generational ways that people handle grief.
Mhm.
Um, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. And a lot of times different avenues will cross. So when I say generational, let's just take example of you have a family that is fairly conservative, um, and their generation has a certain set of beliefs that's been passed down. And this is how our family does things. We don't really talk about our feelings. We have a process that we follow for when someone passes, and that's, we do what is directed within our religion. And sometimes those things do not meet what the person needs. So, you know, we've had the church service. We've had someone's given the eulogy. We all sing the hymns. Everyone's brought food over. Um, and maybe the person's still not feeling like they've been able to identify how they're feeling, or they feel like something's missing. So within that, they might want to step outside of what they've been taught for generations is okay. And that can be really scary for someone when you're looking at a family, two, three, four generations. This is how we've always done it. And they're thinking, okay, everybody else in my family is back as far as we can remember or I can see has processed grief this way, and they've all been okay. How come I'm not? What am I missing? What am I doing? Did I not say that prayer right? Did I not do, the right thing here? And so being able to bring in those outside things that they might not have even thought of or even know are an option can really help someone when they're afraid to break ranks, so to speak.
Instantly when I thought about that, we were always raised with men don't cry. Like that's not a thing that happened in our family. Like we were told our whole life that my grandfather was only seen crying twice, and that was when his parents passed away, and that was the only time was us like able to cry. But you cry at the funeral, away from everybody, and that's it. And I've always thought that that was extremely wrong. And so I make sure my boys know they can cry as much as they want to. So is that a good example of something like that?
That's a perfect example. And I thank you for bringing that up because that's almost a universal thing. Men are tough. They don't cry. You think about it for a few moments, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move on. And that's just not even considering, it's considering maybe your mind, like logically, okay, that makes sense. I can do that. Let's be tough and get on and get through it. But what is that doing to your soul? What is that doing to your spirit and your heart and your emotions? You know, Men are afraid to show those things oftentimes. You know, they're told that weak, they're being a baby or a sissy, but there's nothing weak in showing respect for someone you've lost. There's nothing weak in showing respect for yourself and how you feel. If you continue to stuff down these feelings and don't process them, they will consume you.
I love that how you just phrased that. So I just want to like go back and touch it, that it's a way of showing respect for the person that you lost. Because that to me hits so much different of being like, oh well, like you don't grieve the same, you must not have loved them as much as I did. But I love how you phrased that. So uh but it kind of brings me to another question for a personal thing for me. We lost a dear friend
Mhm.
recently. And the way that I processed it and handled it was extremely different from my husband. But our relationship to this person was different for the both of us. But do you also take clients to help? Because like I was having a hard time at first trying to comfort my husband
Mhm.
on it. So could that be also something too that somebody in a situation like that you would be able to help them as well? So maybe not necessarily my grief, but to help me help somebody else that's in my household and to like deal with their grief.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and your husband are both, you both have an individual, your relationship is different. And so how you're grieving is different to that person. Your relationship was different to that person than your husband's. And so you're seeing your husband grieve in a certain way, and you're like, how do I help him? Yeah, absolutely. Because basically, I can give you insight into, first of all, you know your husband, you're married to him. So you can you can see how he's grieving. So I can ask you the same questions in the same way that I would ask your husband. Does your husband typically show emotion? You know, yes or no? And then depending on the answer, you know, do you think your husband would like to journal about it? Do you, you know, how does your husband, this is really a good one. Whenever you're feeling grief, how do you find joy? What's the thing that brings you joy? Because if you can go to a space that brings you joy and just allow yourself to feel that, often on the behind that joy, the grief will rise. So you're not afraid of the feeling because a lot of people are like, I don't want to feel this. This doesn't feel good. This feels icky. It's scary. It's whatever the verbiage is. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. You know, what am I going to do? If you can get yourself in a place, even if you don't feel joyful, but get yourself doing something that brings you that feeling, even if you're numb while you're doing it. And if you can just let go of the thoughts, oftentimes by the act of doing the thing that is joyful, it'll allow the grief to come up. And then the tears come. And then the words come. Oftentimes the screaming comes. The anger comes. I can remember when my grandfather passed away, and my grandmother, who is a very strong person, she was 6 foot tall, redhead, is sitting at the kitchen table and screaming, why did you leave me? Why did you leave me? I hate you for leaving me. And after she got all that out, I said, Grandma, what do you want to do? What makes you happy? Let's go shopping. So, in the middle of this woman who was breaking down and was just, you know, she'd been with my grandfather for 60 years. She just felt like if she could just go do something that was normal, because she was a bargain hunter, and find something that brought, you know, some little trinket that brought her some joy. If she could just have that moment of normality again, she felt like she'd be okay. We got in the car, we went to her favorite store, she did her shopping, got her little trinkets, we get back in the car, and the dam broke. And she was able to start saying how she felt. Not the hate, not the anger, not why did you leave me, but I loved you for 60 years. We had 5 children together. I don't know how to live life without you. How am I going to move forward? These are all the things, and just it came out. And we sat in the parking lot for an hour, and I didn't say a word. I just let it come. And then I started asking her questions. I'm like, Grandma, what brings you joy? What can we do to honor Grandpa? Well, let's go plant some trees. You know, what can we do to honor Grandpa? Why don't we gather everybody up and go fishing? So doing the things that he would have loved in honor of him put her in a place to be able to let him go. It wasn't going to church. It wasn't having the funeral. Those were all tangible, expected things, but they didn't touch the intangible part inside of her where that little spark of grief lived that she just couldn't let go. So, in doing something that was attached to my grandfather, allowed her to connect in a way and realize all the things he brought to her life. I think one of the most important things that people don't realize is grief is really an opportunity on many levels. It's an opportunity to honor whatever it is you're letting go, a person, a job, a family member, something that you've done that you can no longer do because of circumstances. You know, you can remember it fondly. You can relive and review the things that it taught you. You can learn to let it go. And then you can ask yourself what's next. There's two things that grief brings that most people don't think of. It's a gift. There's always a gift, and there's always an opportunity.
So I've always seen in personal experience, people I feel like get stuck in the anger part of the stages. Because for them it's easier to just be angry than to feel that sadness. Is that something that you commonly see as well?
Absolutely, because anger is such a all-encompassing emotion, and it feels good to let that out. Oftentimes in the anger, you're not only angry at the situation of what's happened, but you're also angry at yourself because you feel like you could have done more or you should have done more. I think anger and bargaining, I think are the two that are the hardest. But let the anger die out on its own. Don't force it. There is no time frame. You have to let each thing pass for however long it takes. Now, absolutely. And I say that with a caveat because if someone passed a year ago or you lost your job a year ago and you're still at that same degree of anger, that's one thing. That means you're stuck and you need to really ask yourself some questions or have some assistance, maybe putting things in a different perspective where someone can come and ask you questions like, you know, what are you feeling and why, and go into the depths of that. But I believe that sometimes there's always a little bit of that anger that remains. I think when you have something that's really impacted you hard, there's anger that remains. I was married for 27 years. I've been divorced for 10. I've had a whole nother relationship. I've moved states, come back, changed jobs, all the things. And do I still have a little bit of anger? Yeah, I do. I invested 27 years with someone that I thought felt the same and they didn't. And that's okay. But do I still kind of get pissed off about it? Yeah, because I wonder if you would have told me 5 years into it, what would have life been like? But I don't let myself go down the road because then the opportunity vanishes. the opportunity vanishes for me to remember, oh yeah, that person didn't love me like I loved them, or they weren't invested in the way that I was. So me staying on this train of thought is not helping me. So the opportunity here is we had two kids. I've got some grandkids. We've decided to go our separate ways. What is my life now? Blank slate. Now that's really scary for some people, but once you get over that fear, it's like I can do anything. I can pick up and move to Portland for the job that I want, which I did. I can go buy the car that I want without having to ask anybody. So that's where if you can just allow yourself a little flow in the thought and a little flow in the feeling, eventually, for most people, it does start to come around like, okay, I'm tired of feeling this way. What can I do to get out of it? What are the gifts? What are the opportunities? It's always there. And it's different for everyone. And that's the beautiful thing, is that it really is different for everyone.
Mom, I feel like you kind of just sitting there. Do you have any questions or anything?
No, I'm just sitting here kind of like taking it all in. Like it because like you're saying, like giving the person a different point of view. So a lot of the stuff that you're saying, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to remember that. Oh, that's a good point. So kind of like to put it in my own words, what you kind of just said over the last couple of questions was it's okay to grieve the life that you had or that you thought you were gonna have without
Mhm.
diminishing what you have and what you could have. So like you could still be trying to move forward and making new goals and like especially from a job point of view. So let's say you lost a job you thought was going to be it for you, your career, but then now you're like, oh wow, now I could pivot. Like I could
Mhm.
turn and take that as a gift because that wouldn't have been a decision I would have made on my own. But now I've
Mhm.
been given this gift to have the opportunity to pivot for something else. But it doesn't mean that the life you dreamed having that job is any less. But now you could build this whole other life. Yeah, I just think it's a really great way to look at it, like a different perspective, like you were saying. Um, and like, so in that same mindset, do you find that, especially if it's a loss of something in a life, maybe not so much like the grief of a death, but do you find that making goals and like that kind of stuff really helps move through that and helps people discover like what their true potential or passion could be?
Absolutely. So I'll just use myself as an example. So I worked for a large corporation for 10 years, and my plan was to retire from there, which is why I moved to Portland, which I love and miss, by the way. But I was there for 3 years doing the corporate thing, and all of a sudden it was like, well, we're going to shut down everything that we have on the West Coast, and you can keep your job, but you're going to have to move to Texas or North Carolina. And I'm like, I'm not moving. And this was a shock to me. I had my path was laid out. And so I had to pivot. I moved back to Boise, which was timely, and I went into another division. And I thought, no problem, same company, I'll love this. 2 months in, I'm sitting in the parking lot and I can't go in. It was so vastly different and not anything that I had planned on, and I couldn't do it. It was like a physical response. I feel like if I go in, I'm going to throw up. So I took a weekend, and the next Monday morning, I walked in and I handed them my keys and I said, I'm done. Part of me is like, oh crap, what did I just do? I could have toughed it out. I could have tried harder. I could have, morphed myself and made myself like an origami animal to fit into this mold that they wanted me to fit into. But I felt like I was dying on the inside. And so I started taking a bunch of temp jobs after coming home and crying and having chocolate and binge watching Netflix for, probably a good week, week and a half. I started taking some temp jobs like, okay, what am I going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do, but let's do something. And through a series of temp jobs, I ended up landing where I thought that I was going to love at a doctor's office. And after a year, went, nope, this is not for me. And lo and behold, I'm back in the same industry, finance, for my 9 to 5 job, but in a company that I adore. So, it was a little bit of a route, but there again lies the opportunity. I had my oh crap moment, gave myself the week to 10 days to cry it out and binge watch. And then, okay, let's try on some things. Let's try on this company and let's try on that company and see how that fits and how that feels because it really comes down to how you feel in alignment. You know, your body knows when you're not in alignment. Hence me sitting in the parking lot and feeling like I'm going to throw up. Your body knows when it's right. Your spirit knows, and you have to learn to trust that feeling. And that's okay. And I think people get so pulled away from that feeling, especially when something hits hard that you're not expecting, like a death or a job loss or, kid moving across country and you're not going to see them for 2 months or they're moving overseas or whatever it is. It wasn't in your plan. That's where that flow comes into. Make an agreement with yourself. I am going to allow myself 2 weeks to just get it out as much as you can. People think they have to rush through it. Like, I've got to keep this down. I can't let it out. It will consume you and it will lay you out. Guaranteed. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next month, but I guarantee you it'll happen.
And mom always talks about when you push down emotions, people have a hard time even knowing what those emotions feel like. Have you had people come to you that they don't even know what they're feeling or what's even happening in their own bodies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had people come to me with an individual came and talked about a one of their children who had gone through a lot of addiction for years and years and years and years. And just the absolute devastation. They felt they were a failure as a parent. You know, they had given money, all the things that you do, given money and, looked for them on the street and all the different things. And they had done it so long that they had really become numb to the whole process. It's just like, I don't even know what I'm feeling anymore. It's almost like a coat of armor that people start putting on. I'm going to put on this coat because I feel raw and feeling raw hurts. So I'm going to cover that up. Okay, that's I don't feel quite so raw and and then the next hit comes and then okay, I'm going to add a little bit more. Maybe I need an extra blanket. And then pretty soon they're so numb or dull. They've just done it for so long, they've never given themselves a break. The hardest thing to do, and it's one of the first things I ask them to do, and I get pushback on it, but it really is where to start. I'm not a let's peel the Band-Aid off gently. I'm like, okay, we've been dealing with this. Let's just rip it off and get through the hard thing first. Because once you get through the hard thing first, everything else follows. Is just learning to sit with yourself, not looking at your phone, not getting on your socials, not turning on the TV, no music. I do that. I go down to the green belt, buy myself a little spot that I can sit or to some park, whatever feels good for you, that you can just go and sit. It is the hardest thing to do, but it's the most rewarding thing to do because once you do that, you come face to face with yourself. There's no other way that you can't. When you don't have all this input of people telling you how to feel, okay, I don't want to feel anything, so I'm going to be on Facebook and I'm going to be on Instagram. And well, I'm tired of doing that. Maybe I'll read a book. Anything to deflect. Once you realize you can't do that anymore and you just sit, it's really hard and it's really uncomfortable, but it's the best thing you can do because there's nowhere to run. There is nowhere to run. And it just takes that one little crack for everything to kind of start. And that's what happens to people who have become so numb. And sometimes it takes them two, three, four, 5 times of doing that. But each time they do it, they all tell me the same thing. The first 5 minutes felt like an hour. Okay, I made it 10 minutes this time. Did anything come up? No, I really hated it though. Okay. And then they'll do it again. This time, I wasn't so angry. I kind of felt more sad. Okay. When the tears come, that's when the breakthrough comes. Always. You have to allow yourself and give yourself some grace to get to that point. We're so distracted by everything around us. It is so easy to not ever get there, but your body will only do that for so long until you just can't anymore. I can remember sitting in my place for 3 weeks, crying straight. I didn't shower for 21 days. I had nothing but water for 21 days. And I sat there and cried. And the only thing I can remember myself saying is, I tried everything I could and none of it mattered. And at the end of all of that, I was completely empty and I had nowhere else to go. I had to start somewhere. So I started reading and I started praying and I started walking and I kind of started to feel alive again. And it was really the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Um, I have a, we all have a lot of things in our life that we are faced with. Mine challenges are not going to be any different from anybody else's. Some have more than others. Any challenge is devastating, any loss is devastating. But if you can just remember, there's always a gift, there's always an opportunity, and there's always hope, no matter what.
Mom, do you have anything you want to ask?
I don't know. Again, I was just listening and taking it in and forgot that I was supposed to be like asking questions. It's just it's just so good stuff. Like it's such a mind trip to like see some of the stuff that you're talking about and the way you're bringing it up of like trusting yourself and going with your intuition and like when it came to your job, like you knew that wasn't the right path for you, but instead of being like, nope, this is what I was supposed to do, this is what my life purpose was, because that's what you thought at the time, but trusting yourself and moving through that. And then, yeah, like you said, you took a couple little bumps along the way and tried some different things, but then now you landed in a job in a position that you adore. But what if somebody, because we've talked a lot on here on previous episodes about intuition and trusting yourself. So being in that, especially since you were just sharing your experience with that, what's something that you could tell our listeners, like if they're in the middle of that and they're in the darkest part of whatever their grief is, and they're
Mhm.
trying to make that, how do they trust themselves and build that intuition and confidence back in them? Like, what's the first step? Like I know you're just talking about sitting with yourself, but what else is another thing that they could do, like with that or before that or
This one's really easy. Um, And I do this a lot, and it's been really helpful for me. And I still do it, even if I just have a question. And the one thing that I want people to know is that take this in bites. I mean, it's not like you're not going to eat the whole cake in one bite, right? So you need to, take it in bites. But I think probably one of the easiest things that you can do that really takes less than a minute before when you're getting ready to go to bed at night, and you lay down and you're just kind of relaxing and you're just getting ready to kind of fall asleep. Ask yourself, whatever it is you believe, universe, God, whatever, what do I need to know? What do I need to know? And then when you wake up, don't grab your phone, don't look, turn on the TV, whatever it is that you normally do. Just give yourself a minute or two. It may not happen the first night, it may take a week, but something will come up and you'll be surprised. And it's different for everyone. I'm just going to be real personal, and I hope that that's okay. I've been doing this for quite a while. What do I need to know? Give me guidance, that kind of thing. And then I had three questions that I wanted to know. One was, what do I do for my health? What do I do for my business? And then when my husband and I got divorced, the father of my kids, my youngest daughter, we hadn't spoke for 7 years. This was her decision. I honored that really hard to do. And I said, really like to have a relationship with her. 7 years, nothing. I would get emails from her dad. Want to let you know this is what's happening in her life. The next morning I woke up. This is what I want you to do for your business, which is speak grief. This is what I want you to do for your health. Open up my email. Hey, Mom, it's been a while.
Mm.
I think we really need to talk. 7 years and nothing. It works.
Wow, that's powerful. So you having that guidance that you got, is that how you started your business?
Hmm. Yeah, I had a couple of different ideas, and in my crazy head, couldn't, what I could do this and I could do that, and there's all these options. And it's just like, I'm not going to do the chaos to crazy and back again. I really try to find pleasure and do the simple thing. And that was the simple thing. I can ask that question, what do I need to know? Just a few words. And that's where it came from. That's where it started.
That, and I just want to say, I think what you do is so powerful and so amazing because I think grief is something that's not talked about enough. And I think people don't have the support that they need to work through it. So I think you coming up and having this business is such a powerful thing. And you having this experience that you're willing to talk from I think is super amazing. And I just want to make sure I say that and for you to know that I'm super grateful for what you're doing because I'm sure in my life down the road, I'll need your services too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to ask, so I know especially like through the different stages or chapters in my life and going through a divorce and blended family and all of that stuff. I feel like I am more myself now than I thought I was when I was younger, but I thought I had all my stuff together. Um, so going through all of your stuff and the life experiences and new chapters and stuff like that, and using the model that you've created with Speak Grief, is there anything that surprises you now? Because like you already shared, like at your stage in life, is there something that has surprised you or something that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I think aging is a really cool thing. You know, people who have this idea of, oh, I mean, my 40s were great, my 50s, all of these things. Every stage is great. Yeah, I'm an 80s rocker chick. Okay. If Mick Jagger can be out there, 70s, like mid 70s, out there singing, I'm going to be out there listening. Age doesn't change who you are. It just changes how you may have to do things. So if I'm not down, in the mosh pit, or I'm not down, on the floor, packed up against the rail, then I'm in the stands. It doesn't it doesn't have to change who you are. You just might have to change how you do it. That's all. My goal is to be the coolest 61-year-old that I can be. And I hope people can really embrace that. I've got my tattoos, I've got my nose pierced. Didn't do it for anybody but me. There's no rules. There's no rules. Just be you, and whatever age that is. I am more me now, like you said, than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because my approval came from everybody else. I had zero identity. Everything starts with identity. You got to know who you are.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell my daughter, um, whenever she does something, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could be as cool as you when I grow up. Because some of the stuff that I know now, like I wish somebody would have told me. So then now to be able to share that with my kids and then to see how they're addressing the grandkids, I think is super, super wild. Like some of it just blows my mind. Um, Especially with, how, at least in our household, my kids teaching my grandkids, their children. It's not so much, well, this is what a woman does, this is what a man does, this is, but still being able to, share that with them across the board, I think is so crazy. And but is there something like looking back now that you would have told your younger self?
A lot of things. Let me think real quick here. Something that I would have told my younger self. Just be true to yourself. It's okay if not everybody likes you. It's okay if you don't always fit in. Be real with yourself and just be you. Just be authentically you. It's so hard, especially when we're getting so bombarded every day about what's in and the new, if you're not Botoxed and filled and you know all the things, then you're not fitting in. I mean, every single one of us is different. Why would you want to copycat anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's so so beautiful. Is there any last bit of juicy tips or insights that you would love to share with our listeners, or something that you really want them to take away from this time with you?
The only way out is through. If you think you're not going to deal with it, you will, whether by choice or by force. And what I mean by that is that if you don't make the choice to do it, your body will force you to do it. And there's always hope. As long as you have breath in your lungs, there's always hope. Always. There's always a way out. You may not know it. You may not be able to think of what it is. You may not have a clue of what to do. But before you go to sleep, what do I need to know? That's the first step.
Okay, so now it's time for one of my favorite parts of the episode. We got to do the Citrine Path lightning round.
Okay.
So, what is walking your path mean to you?
Uh, Authenticity, being sovereign, and what that means to me is feeling like I'm in alignment, and I know what that feels like. If I have any anxiety or any worry, and I think it's different for everyone. It's feeling it in here. When you're in your sweet spot.
So, what spiritual practice grounds you most?
being out in nature, putting my feet in the grass. And I really love to be by water, a river, a lake, anything like that, especially if it's running water.
And you are a lady after my own heart. That's my favorite thing to do too. That's the most amazing part. What is a lesson that the universe keeps teaching you?
Let it go. Resistance is futile. Let it go.
Do you have a favorite tool that you use? Like could be crystals, tarot cards, or anything like that.
I really love rose quartz, because of the healing and the deep emotional work that it provides. I have a beautiful rose quartz necklace. Prayer, and that's what I call it. And I do have some oracle decks, and my favorite is the loving words of Jesus because Jesus was a rebel and a hippie. And he came to flip the tables and turn everything upside down. And I don't know, I'm a Jesus girl, so that's where I'm at.
No, I love that. I think that'd be a super fun conversation to have with you. So last one, what is a current life mantra or affirmation?
I saw this one and I wrote it down. It's a little bit wordy, so otherwise I'll mess it up. And this is by Carl Jung, the psychologist. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of the human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being.
So, if somebody listening is interested in talking to you about anything we talked about today or talking to you about possibly seeing you one-on-one, how can they find you?
Well, I'm a little behind the game. I'm just now getting my website and my socials up, so probably email or phone until that gets going. So my email is, and you're gonna laugh, baby, Baby, lamb, LAMB, 1965 at Gmail. And I'm gonna go ahead and get my phone number out here, 208-506-9481.
Perfect. Well, Sherri, I just want to say thank you so much again for coming and spending this time with us today and sharing all of your personal experiences with us. I know that's not always the easiest thing, but thank you so much for being so brave and talking with us and just being here and spending time with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Just I've kind of just been sitting here in awe and not super um on talkative as much as I normally is because so much of it like I was just sitting here just listening to it and taking it all in. And I know from what I do with my patients and clients, sharing my story is such a huge help for them because then makes that community sensation and that you're not alone. And wow, look, we all have stuff we're going through. But I think a lot of times, at least for me, it's really easy to get hyper focused on mine and not realizing like, oh wow, other people are going through it too. I can lean on them and reach out. And so I think everything that you shared and everything, just so blessed that you're willing to open up and share your story. Yeah, it was all just so beautiful. And I'm so many little tidbits that I'm going to take away and work into my daily practice in my life for later. So really do humbly appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was really a pleasure.
So, everybody watching, thank you so much for coming and joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as we have, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you for walking the path with us. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and keep following your light. The views and experiences shared on Citrine Path are for educational, inspirational, and entertainment purposes only and are not intended as medical, psychological, or professional advice.